All right. Good morning, Julie. How are you?
Good morning, Monica. I'm doing well. It's actually evening here in the UK, so I'm actually doing really well, thanks. And amidst all of the craziness that's actually out there at the moment, so really good. Nice to see you. And how are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. It's morning, so I'm on the opposite end, just starting my day. I do want to take a moment. I know this is, I do want to take a moment just to introduce you and myself. But my name's Monica Gomes, and I have been on a spiritual journey like no other, and that is how I got introduced to you. And I just want to just let everyone know who you are. So Julie here is a Diamond Light Energy Facilitator. Sorry if you can't understand everything that comes out of my mouth, but I'm gonna let Julie do all the talking so I don't butcher everything. But I do want to just kind of touch on like who is she, who am I, and how do we get connected? So I'm not too important here, but I am someone who's been on a journey, and I don't know about you, but I am one of those people who, when I get into something or I find something out, I dig really deep, and I want to know everything. And people might say, Monica, you're a know it all. And it's not that I'm a know it all, I just want to know it all. I mean, I think that we should all be like kids always, that we were always growing and learning, asking questions. And so, Julie, I know that you've known my grandmother for years. And one thing to touch on my grandmother is I don't know how or why, but anything that woman refers, it's always the best of the best, the best cook, the best this. So when I told her, this is the weirdest thing actually. One morning, I was thinking, I should tell my Nana I'm going to get an energy alignment. Before I even called her, she called me and mentioned you to me. And I thought, wow, like we're just totally connected that way. But I right away connected with you, and she said, well, Monica, I have this amazing friend, and the only person I will ever get my energy alignments from. And she said, she is open to helping you out because she said she's known you for so many years. And she said that you would allow me to pick your brain for a minute. And I was so grateful. I was going through such a scary and tough time. And I think everyone can relate when they're on their spiritual journey. What is that? What's real? What's going on? What's happening to me? And I won't go into what was happening to me, but I will say I was forever grateful. And I interrupted our Q&A and asked for your services. And as you started talking, I just felt like I found like the cure to cancer.
I don't have the cure for cancer. Oh,
No, but pretty close to it.
one
I wouldn't be
remains.
surprised if you did at some point. You know, anything I mention, I feel like you finish my sentences with the answer. And I feel like you have so much to offer and so much to share with the world. But please, just I want you to touch on how is it that, I mean, I know I found that you had so much knowledge, so much experience, so much value. You know the terminology of all everything under the moon for old age to new age, that maybe things that my grandmother knows but doesn't know the new verbiage, and that just is kind of give an example. And I just want to, I mean, share with everyone, please, what is it that you're going to be sharing with us on these videos like coming up? And how did this all come about?
Okay, we have a lot of things to share, and thank you for that, Monica. It's just been an absolute delight, and it's lovely to connect with you and to be given the opportunity to actually share. You know, it's only through, I think, interactions like this that one realizes, and it's certainly for me, this is the case, that you realize how much experience, how much you have learned through experiences over the years that you then forget about because they just become an integrated part of your being until somebody starts asking questions, you know, and you kind of like draw from the data bank and from that wonderful if you like, the bag that you carry around inside of you, the toolkit that's been developed over many years, and then realize how much you actually have that adds value and has added value not only to my own life, but added value to others. So thank you for the opportunity to share that. I work technically with energy, you know, and that's in its simplest terms and its simplest form. I work with energy in many different ways, and fundamental to that is understanding that everything is energy. The appearance of who we are as physical beings is actually just a projection and a materialized form of something that pre-exists as a non-matter form before we even come into being physically. We are a soul, an essence that is then projected into the world to live out experiences in the world using this physical body. And that's something that so many of us have actually forgotten. So my journey has actually been more than 2 decades. So it's like more than 22 years ago. And
22,
I went through,
really? You're using master
yes.
numbers here?
Yeah, she didn't even realize that. Yeah, it was 1998, between 97 and 98.
So legitimately 22.
22 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can still remember those initial events. And I remember for myself, because I mean, I was just like a normal everyday person prior to that. I had a career. I worked in the business world. You know, I did all of the things that I thought I was supposed to do until one day something happened and it threw my world upside down, and it opened me up to realms beyond the physical that I hadn't even, I perhaps always considered them. I think it was always there. Was always this fascination with the questions that science couldn't answer and how easily things were fobbed off. So a fascination with what you might call the paranormal, with, you know, hypnotherapy and how it works, and all sorts of, and healing, faith healing and hands-on healing. But I never really sort of dove into it. It was just something I was always interested in. And then I started experiencing it in my own life. And it was just absolutely mind-blowing. And I think the one thing that's important, and I think that's why it's really important that we're doing what we're doing at the moment, and that you've given me this opportunity to actually open up and speak, is that for many, many people, the awakening to opening up to the fact that we are more than we thought we were is usually precipitated by some kind of crisis in our lives. And I know that with you and I having spoken, you know, there was a crisis event that opened you up to your own awakening. For me, that was exactly the same 22 years ago. It was a crisis, and it was a decision that I made in the midst of that I wanted to take my power back from the circumstances that were actually draining me at that time. And that one single decision precipitated sequences of events, an introduction to worlds that I didn't even know existed. It opened up and it switched on my own healing abilities, which I'd been told about. Psychics had told me about that, you know, like 40 years ago. And I kind of put it on the back burner and said, well, I don't really know what that means, until all of a sudden I had this energy running through my body that was just, you know, sort of running through the palms of my hands as the most incredible heat that I could sense. And the weird thing about it is, you know, I'd sort of like do this and go, well, I can't actually feel that on my skin, but if I put my hands around a crystal, and I knew nothing about crystals, it's like suddenly there was this heat that I couldn't explain, you know, so there was some energy stuff happening even back then that was just absolutely phenomenal. You know, somebody would walk into my office and they would be 7 feet away, and they're people that I've always known, you know, worked with and known, and suddenly every hair on my body would stand on end. And it was like my nervous system had just gone into absolute overdrive, like I was sensing everything in the environment. So it's been a fascinating, absolutely fascinating process.
You know, Julie, I want to take a minute. I'm glad you mentioned how we connected. You're right. My best friend passed away, and all of a sudden I was aware of everything. And I remember telling one, you could think I'm crazy, but I know she's with me. Like, I know that's something everyone says when someone passes, but I felt it in the energy. I felt it. I felt her presence. And I had, I can't say the word, but synchronicity.
Synchronistic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Whether it be songs or numbers. And what's really, what's ironic is my son says, Mommy, I saw numbers years ago, but you kind of brushed it off. And it was because I was still asleep. So I didn't know he was, I'm like, okay, like whatever.
That's part of the triggering. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really believe he's an old soul for sure. And it's funny you say that psychics had told you. I know that I've had the same thing because when my friend passed away, that was the first thing that we think of, right? To connect with a psychic. And they would tell me, well, you feel a lot, you this, you that. And I took that another level and I said, well, the things I'm reading, it makes sense why I feel a lot, whether it being an empath or one thing I think is really funny is I'm very intuitive, and I always just would tell people would say, how do you know so much about this person or that person? You just met them. And I said, I have a lot of life experience. And I was 18 when I would start saying that. And I might have gone through a lot, but I'm sure I didn't go through that much at 18 to just meet someone and know everything. So it's funny, you just mentioned we're not even fully aware of certain things. And I think I want to say that when you go through your awakening, a lot of it is just being aware and believing, right? A lot of that once you believe it, you will be more aware and feel the difference.
Yeah, I think, what you just said is interesting because the way that people tend to look at life is I will believe it when I see it.
Yes.
Whereas what really happens is completely the opposite. I will see it when I believe it. And it's when we start experiencing things that it actually confirms the knowing and the understanding. In fact, ultimately, further down the track, we actually go beyond belief into a knowing, and just an absolute knowing of who we are, a knowing of the interconnectedness. So I mean, that starts us off though, where we have to change the paradigm from I only trust what I see with my physical senses, to beginning to trust what it is that we know, that we feel and believe within ourselves. And then we actually see it becoming manifest in the external world. And one of the ways that we experience that and come to know it is through things like synchronicity. And some people may not have heard that term synchronicity before. What it really means is, I think Carl Jung was the one that described synchronicity as meaningful coincidences. So people will fob off things that happen almost quite magically, it's just a coincidence that happened. You thought that, or you were headed off down this road and you had this little nudge that you actually had to take a different route, and then you find out there was an accident on the road that you were going to go on with. Oh, it's just a coincidence. It's actually much deeper than that, because it's part and parcel of our connection to a unified field. It's part of the energetic fabric of life itself that we become tapped into.
And I think that's why, like, okay, for my best friend passing away, that's when we're looking for a sign. So it almost makes me wonder. And I found out that she was also very spiritual. Like, now that I'm more that I've learned so much, I can call things out a lot more easier. And I realized, I said, I think she was this, I think she was that, and it was kind of verified. And but it was because of her passing, I was looking for signs, and then I was asking for them. And I thought that was so powerful. And I know that you'll eventually in one of our sessions talk about just knowing, like just being in tune with our higher self. And I won't tap into it too much because I know we have so many more sessions. But it was, and that, one thing I do love, I know my grandmother was like, "Oh my goodness, how did you learn all this? How did you know all this?" Like, and I said, "Well, Julie solidified everything for me. She took me out of thinking I'm cuckoo in the back and forth game, and still I know I tell you, am I cuckoo or is this real?" And it's funny because you kind of put me in check every week, even though I know it's like you always remind me, Monica, once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep.
That's the thing. I mean, we could choose to. We could decide we want to go back to sleep. Um, but it's going to be very, very difficult to, especially now. Because, we were talking about this in our individual lives, is that very, very often it's a crisis that we face at an individual level. Well, what's actually happening now globally is that there is a global crisis. And there has been already this year a wave of people awakening, a massive wave of people awakening to the fact that the world was not what they thought it was,
Yeah.
that things are not run according to what they thought they were, and that perhaps there is actually more to life. And there's a couple of questions actually starting to be asked. So we've kind of seen the first wave. Where we're at now, moving into the end of 2020 and into 2021, is that there's another massive wave of awakening that is coming. More and more and more people are being woken up as a consequence of the global crisis that is ongoing. So the pressures that are being exerted on people are almost squeezing everything out that has been in the way of their capacity and ability to be able to see through. So the veils are dropping, if you like, and it's squeezing them into a whole new place. And that's why it's really opportune for us to be chatting at this time, and while we've got all of these great ideas for sharing with people, because it's an accelerated awakening. I mean, 22 years ago when I started, I had my own individual mentor, and she was my teacher. She was amazing. She gave me such a powerful foundation for moving forward in terms of understanding natural healing, energy healing, and understanding how to relate to the world in that sense, how to meditate, how to ask the questions, and how to read the signs. And through that and having that foundation, I developed a very deep trust in my own, for want of a better description, essence, higher self capacity to be able to guide me in life. And I mean, there's lots of stories and anecdotal stories that I can actually share through the process. But for now, where we're at, and for many, many people, they are waking up to all of this stuff. But there's not enough time to actually have your own individual mentor and to read through all of the books. I mean, for myself, 22 years ago, I read and read and read and read and read, and sort of listened.
It's an addiction. Once you tap into it, you just,
it's like, I want to know more. I want to know more.
During this pandemic, I would have the time to read, and I was up till 2, 3 in the morning, and I would put on a movie, and I didn't even look up for the movie. I'm just reading and reading. And one thing I found interesting, and you and I connected, and it was very lonely. I had maybe two or three friends that I can talk to that wouldn't call me cuckoo.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to fill out the room. But one thing I realized is, as during this pandemic and COVID, we're all isolated. As we were starting to hang out with friends here and there, I learned so much, whether it be my Persian friends, my Asian friends, my Latin friends, and just learning. It was amazing because you're learning just different spiritual paths from all over the world in a way. And one thing I would hear the verbiage, and it was like everyone had that itch to talk about it, but they weren't sure. So I was like, well, let me clear the room here and open everyone up. And then as I'm connecting with you, I said, Julie, you just have so much that you need to share with the world. And I it's funny because you hear so many people saying I can be a spiritual coach, and I'm not here to bash anyone. But as much as I've learned, I feel like I know a lot more than people who have been learning for years. But I am nowhere near going to tell you that I can teach you everything or anything. And I will cry.
I'm not going to do that either, and I've been going for 22
But I'm going to
years.
direct them to you. So I'm not going to try, but and it's crazy. And I tell you this all the time. I'm like, I have people that have been learning for years, and I just feel like, I just keep my mouth quiet. I'm like, nod and smile and redirect. But I wanted to say that, and you mentioned something else real quick. You said getting the guidance. My grandmother, she taught me a lot during my journey as well, between the two of you. Whether she taught me, and we'll go into it in other sessions, whether it be how to protect myself, but she taught me how to get that guidance. And I said, Nana, I'm not feeling too good. I don't have much clarity in my mind today. I'm very conflicted in what to do. And she taught me, sometimes we ask for a sign, but she taught me how to, I guess, a more powerful way to ask for that sign. And I'm going to just share with everyone, but she said, ask God to enhance that feeling, whether it's a yes or a no. And it works like magic. And I always say the law of attraction is like magic, very similar, very similar. It's very magical. Because all of a sudden you'll realize I no longer am conflicted or having that tug of war with myself. I know I don't want to do that, or I know I'm very excited to do that. And I just thought, wow, that's so powerful.
It's very powerful, Monica, and that's also part of the process of developing trust in the signals, because ultimately, while we ask for external signs, the signal is actually within our own self, within our own being. So we learn to develop a deep, deep trust in the little nudges and signals that come from within to guide us in the right direction, because that is ultimately where it comes from. And these are, along the way, some of the distortions that have happened in many of the New Age teachings out there. I've been through the whole lot. I went through the whole quagmire of all of the New Age teachings, in a sense. And what is fascinating for me is sort of back in about 2003, I was doing a lot of meditating at the time, and I was asking a lot of questions, and I was actually, for want of a better description, channeling. Now that this doesn't mean, what I'm going to say doesn't mean that channeling is actually a bad thing, but it does mean that there is a lot of discernment required, because so very often the authority and the power is given to something, again, that is external. And one of the things that I realized, and it was so fascinating, because I was sitting there the one day and I'd actually connected with the being that I was actually working with, and suddenly this voice and I couldn't tell you where it was from inside of me, actually said, how do you know who you're talking to? And I stopped. And I kind of went, okay, that's a very good question. Like, where did that come from? And the question came again, how do you know who you're talking to? And I went, okay. So I know that there are various things that are actually proposed, but in that time I was sitting on my own, and this was the question. And I went, okay, so if I want to know without doubt who is guiding my life and who I'm talking to, the only being or aspect that I know would never lie to me, and that is actually the font of my own truth, is what you might call, what I call my higher self, the essence of me. The essence of me that can see far more than I can in the physical form. So if I actually then work with that aspect of myself, then I know that I can trust whatever information I'm getting. And I call her Big Jules. A lot of my community have actually heard me talk about this. I decided to call her Big Jules, because Big Jules, she's big. She's much bigger than me. It's
I'm
like
thinking a big gem.
Yeah, so she can see and perceive a lot more than I can. So sort of transferred the work that I was doing, or transmuted it into connecting whenever I went into meditation with Big Jules. And I went, Big Jules, what is it that I need to know right now? You know, like, what is it that I need to understand about this? Blah, 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 blah. And the messages actually started coming in, that I developed within me a signal, some kind of response, physiological, bodily response that would tell me and alert me that this was Big Jules. That's fine. So I knew I could trust it. And that's all I've ever worked with. So people say to me, well, where do you get the information for the Diamond Light Grid work that you do? And I'm going, from me, from Big Jules.
You know, I remember you and I having this conversation, and you shared that with me, and I mentioned the same thing. I said, I read so much, and they're like, ask for your spirit and angel guides. And I said, you think a bad guide is going to tell you, admit that they're bad? No, they're going to pretend to be good. So
Yes.
who and what are you trusting? Because you don't know how quickly that could be, like verbal abuse on steroids, right?
Yeah.
But
so it does require, you know, and we'll talk about this through some of the sessions as well. It does require a great deal of discernment to be developed in terms of what is right, what to trust, and how to develop the depth of that trust. Because let's face it, at the moment there's information coming in from so many sides. It's like, what do you trust? Who do you trust? You know, so that's part and parcel of the spiritual journey, and it's part and parcel of the Great Awakening, is to actually learn to develop and build that place within that you can go to, that is your barometer, that is that place from which you can actually receive the guidance for your life, because ultimately that is who we are. We are incredibly powerful human beings, and that is what is awakening within us now through this incredible global crisis.
You're speaking, and I feel like that is such a most powerful way to end us today, because you just said it there. And you're going to be talking more about getting connected and trusting our higher self, and so much more about the words I cannot pronounce synchros. There's so many different topics under the moon. And as you can see, me and Julie can probably go for hours with a lot of cafe and tea if we wanted to. So I'm just so excited. I know that on your website that your meat and potatoes is being a Diamond Light energy facilitator. Yeah. But I see so much value that I want to share with the world, especially as we are going through this huge, massive, just a massive spiritual awakening with
huge.
And people.
And if I can just say, if I can end it, Monica, if you don't mind, to put it into perspective, there's a lot of people now talking about Diamond Light, and that we are Diamond Light beings, and this is part of the current transformation. And this started for me in 2003, 2004, when I was given that information, and nobody knew what I was talking about. And I'm getting, that's who we are. We are that Diamond Light, and the beauty of actually seeing and hearing so many people talking about it now is amazing. And that aspect of our being is the essence and the aspect that has the brilliant transparency and clarity to see through everything to the truth. And that's really what the awakening is about. So, sorry, I just wanted to put that in, to put it into perspective, because any Diamond Light alignment work is an energetic alignment with your own truth. That's ultimately beautiful. What it is. So
I know everyone's going to think that this is very biased because I'm very bedazzled and you just happen to be talking about that. No, people, I see that. That's not it, but I love the name. But no, and now I just lost track of what I was going to say into response of what you just mentioned. But, oh yes. And this will be a whole nother topic, but I know that if there's a lot of people who are very empathetic, empaths out there, and this help in some of your topics, they help me coming back to knowing the truth and what is not my energy, what is not my truth. And we will talk about that on another topic, another day. I want to thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to our journey together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Ciao.
Look forward to connecting more. Bye.